Recently, the Adani Group received approval from the Shipping Ministry to begin operations at its Vizhinjam Port as India's first transshipment port. The port is going to put India on the global shipping map. But how? And what is transshipment? And how does it work? We'll discuss all this in detail in today's video. Hello guys, I am Saurav and welcome to the Arc. Before going into the details about this particular port, let's first understand what exactly transshipment is and why is it so important. A transshipment port is kind of a transit hub where cargo from one ship is transferred to another ship on the way to its final destination. Transshipment is done for various reasons. Many a time the port of origin and destination are not directly linked. So the transshipment port acts as an intermediary. But the major reason behind transshipment is oftentimes the origin or destination port is not big enough to accommodate large vessels. In such a case, either cargo is sent in smaller vessels to a transshipment port to be loaded on bigger vessels, or unloaded at a transshipment port onto smaller vessels, which would head to the port with less depth, which can't harbour large vessels. As economy of scale kicks in, shipping cost goes down with large vessels, which is why global shipping nowadays is moving towards larger shipping vessels. Therefore, transshipment ports play a vital role in promoting business and trade for a country. So how many such ports does India have? 0. About 75% of India's transshipped cargo is handled at foreign ports, with Colombo, Singapore and Port Klang in Malaysia handling over 85% of this cargo. Colombo port alone handles more than 50% of India's transshipped consignments. So for example, if cargo is shipped from a port in say Europe, destined for say Visakhapatnam, the cargo would be loaded on one of these ultra-large ships. It would then travel via the Suez Canal and would reach the Colombo port. Then it would be transferred onto smaller vessels to be delivered at the Visakhapatnam port, from where it can reach its destination. But what does it cost? Both time and huge foreign exchange as transshipment charges. But the Vizhinjam port is going to change this. Vizhinjam port will be India's first full-fledged deep-water transshipment port. It is located south to Kerala's capital Thiruvananthapuram. The port will be able to handle even the ultra-large container ships, with capacity ranging from 10,000 to 25,000 TEUs or even more. If you ask what are these TEUs, container volumes are measured in TEU or 20-foot equivalent units. You might have seen these containers being transported by rail, road or by ships. In global shipping standards, the TEU unit of measurement was derived by the size of a standard 20-feet shipping container, which measures 20 feet in length. Today the world's biggest container ships of the Mega Max class have capacities exceeding 24,000 TEUs. For these ultra-large ships to operate, 18-meter draft is essential, and currently none of the Indian ports have the draft to handle these ultra-large ships. But the Vizhinjam port is going to change that. But the question is, why Vizhinjam? If you look at the map here, Vizhinjam is located about 10 to 20 nautical miles from the international shipping route, connecting Europe and the Persian Gulf with East Asia, through which around 30% of global maritime cargo passes. Its strategic location between the Suez Canal and the Strait of Malacca, two of the world's busiest shipping channels, is a big advantage. Secondly, the natural draft at Vizhinjam is 18 to 20 meters, as opposed to 7 to 18 meters in India's existing ports. To be built with an estimated investment of 7,700 crore rupees, the port is a joint venture between the Kerala Govt and the Adani Ports and SEZ Limited, while the central government is providing the viability gap funding. The capacity of Vizhinjam port is expected to be 1 million TEUs initially, and in subsequent phases, the capacity is expected to be expanded by an additional 6.2 million TEUs. Vizhinjam welcomed its first ship, Zhenhua 15, a Chinese ship carrying cranes for the port operation, on 15th October last year. And now it has received approval from the Ministry of Shipping to start operations. Once fully operational, the Vizhinjam port will compete with the ports in the vicinity, such as Colombo Port in Sri Lanka, Salalah in Oman, and the Singapore Port. Now let's try to understand how important are these ports and other related infrastructure for a country's economy, and where do we currently stand in the world. India has a long coastline spanning over 7,500 kilometers. India has 12 major and 200 plus non-major ports. 95% of the country's trade by volume and 65% of the trade by value is done through the seas. In 2022-23, India's exports reached $770 billion, with imports at $892 billion, and government is targeting a total export of $2 trillion by 2029-30. But the Reserve Bank of India in a report in 2022 said, poor shipping connectivity has hindered India's integration into the global value chain. But how so? India's container traffic was only 70 million TEUs in 2020 versus China's 245 million TEUs, which makes India's container traffic less than 10% of China's. Globally, 7 of the top 10 ports in the world today are Chinese. Indian ports Mundra and JNPT rank 26th and 27th respectively. China has more than half a dozen transshipment ports and India has none. Indian ports lose up to $200 to $220 million of potential revenue each year on transshipment handling of cargo originating or destined for India. India targets to become the third largest economy of the world with a GDP of $5 trillion next year. For that, India aims to become a crucial part of the global value and supply chains, and that can't be achieved without a robust port infrastructure. If you look at China, it is known as the factory of the world. China witnessed spectacular growth in the past few decades, and it was made possible by ports. China has the world's biggest and busiest ports that have helped it ship an enormous amount of domestically manufactured goods to all across the world. And for India to become the manufacturer of the world, ports are extremely important. With that in mind, Government of India has prepared a Maritime India Vision 2030 in the year 2021. The Maritime Vision 2030 seeks to develop world-class megaports, transshipment hubs, and modernize infrastructure with an estimated investment of 1.25 lakh crore rupees. The shipping industry is moving towards mega-sized vessels. As per estimates, more than 40% of the total order book in the next 3 to 5 years will be fulfilled by ships of size 20,000 TEU and above. These bigger vessels require at least 18 meters of draft, and draft depth in Indian ports varies widely between 7 to 20 meters. Hence, there are plans to increase the draft of all the major ports of the country by dredging. There are also plans for capacity expansion and mechanization and automation of all the major ports. India is targeting to develop Vadhavan JNPT cluster, Paradip Port, and the Deen Dayal Port as megaports with world-class infrastructure by 2030 with more than 300 MTPA capacity. India targets domestic cargo transshipment handled by Indian ports from the current 25% to more than 75% by 2030. And for that, India is planning more transshipment hubs. There are multiple factors to consider while selecting a transshipment port. First, it has to have the necessary draft depth. Second, there should be minimum deviation towards the transshipment port from the set routes. Then there should be good hinterland connectivity to manufacturing clusters. Finally, for a transshipment hub to attract business, it has to offer competitive prices and minimum turnaround time. Now if you look at the map here, Vizhinjam, Kanyakumari region and Campbell Bay are the best suited for transshipment operations, given their locations are within 6 to 10 nautical miles and a deviation of 0.5 to 1 hour from the international Suez Far East trade route. After Vizhinjam, government is developing another transshipment port project at Galathea Bay in the Great Nicobar Island of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in the Bay of Bengal. It will be called the International Container Transshipment Port or ICTP. With a natural depth of 20 meters, Galathea Bay, like Vizhinjam, can accommodate large container vessels. The port is strategically located about 40 nautical miles away from the east-west shipping route, and it lies just outside the crowded Malacca Strait. Once operational, the ICTP will attract large container ships with freight headed to countries like Bangladesh and Myanmar, among others, that have been dependent on ports in Singapore and Malaysia. A total of 44,000 crore rupees will be invested in the project. The first phase will be built with 19,000 crore rupees and will be commissioned in 2028 with handling capacity of 4 million TEUs, which will go up to 16 million TEUs upon completion. Vizhinjam and ICTP are extremely important for Indian manufacturers to sell their goods all over the world. Lower logistic and shipping costs and greater cargo and container capacities are beneficial for domestic manufacturers to compete with global manufacturers. Once fully operational, the Vizhinjam Port will have the capacity to cater to 75% of India's container transshipment needs. This will save a large amount of foreign exchange that it has been paying foreign ports for its transshipment needs. Additionally, it will also grab a slice of transshipment business currently going to Dubai, Sri Lanka and Singapore to come to India. The Vizhinjam Port is going to be a game changer in the coming times. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe the channel for more such interesting videos. Thank you.